Hey everyone, welcome to Behind the Minds with Tyler Simmons, Jordan Brooks, and Robbie Crouse. It's a volleyball podcast. This is episode number 3. The second one was about an NBA draft, how to get recruited. First one was just a little intro about us. Today we're going to talk about something huge in volleyball and sports, but mainly in volleyball, is team culture. It's a pretty broad subject, so that's why it's going to be the whole episode. But before we start, off free agency for the draft, I'm going to pick up Paul George. I talked to my scouts, and
No. I thought about taking him actually.
I gotta take him on
He was on in my mind there. Like when I was getting down to the nitty gritty, I was like, should I take Paul George? I just keep picturing him snapping his leg, so I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I still think my team is well balanced. And it has a good team culture. We have a bunch of winners on my squad, a bunch of winners.
And team culture is one thing that I thought about with drafting mine, was a bunch of people who are shitheads, have points to prove, much like myself. But we'll kind of throw it around a bit to see what culture is to you, to everybody. Does anyone want to start taking it off?
I'll start. So for me, team culture is like what the team does as a group to get to their collective goals. So it's just like, how do you behave together? How hard do you want to work together? It's just a togetherness as a group of players. It could be something as like everyone wearing the same type of socks. As long as everyone's buying into a common goal, that is for me what team culture is. Everyone buying in. It doesn't matter how big, how small it is. It could be something like deciding to wear black socks, but if that keeps the team as a unit, as a group, that's what I find is team culture. It could be anything big, it could be anything small, as long as everyone's working together.
Yeah, I agree. Shout out Fab Five, they did the black socks first.
Yeah, amen.
And just as long as everyone's on the same page and pushing towards, and you don't have people who are they're against it, but they're just not pushing it with everybody. Team culture is huge in sports, especially a sport like volleyball, where it's a lot of momentum based. For me, culture is your mindset, where your head's at, everybody buying in, like Tyler touched on, and just everybody for the same goal. And it's huge. Yeah. It ruins teams, honestly. If your team doesn't have a good nucleus, not
can make
always,
or break them.
Yeah, one person goes through the team, they're like, I want to score a certain amount of points, and then breaking free of what the team culture is or the team dynamic is, it ruins everything.
Oh, for sure.
100%.
Brooks, you want to touch on culture, what culture is to you?
Yeah. Honestly, to me, when I think about team culture, I think about kind of everything that the team does if you just take the technical side of it kind of out of things. Like, you take away anything to do with the sport itself. What are you doing aside from that to make yourselves a better team? And I think we can all admit that we've been a part of some teams or coached some teams that had some really good team culture. I think the three of us can all admit we've been a part of teams that had terrible team culture, right? So, and Tyler, I see Tyler smiling there. And it's like, honestly, like, team culture is just something that if your skill level or like your physical like ability and skill level can be here, but that culture can put you to there. Do you know what I mean? So it's a hidden gem that it doesn't matter what you're doing physically. It's purely just mental and just, it makes such a big difference. And when you talked about momentum, I took a sports psych class, actually a couple here at UMB when I was doing my undergrad, because I took some side courses for my electives. And the prof is actually the sports psychologist for the Montreal Canadiens. Nice. And he did it with the Canucks too. So he's a big deal, right? So he actually said, and T can attest to this, he used to make fun of me and T because we were volleyball players. He'd always make fun of us. But he actually said in one of our lessons, we learned about momentum, and he said the sport of volleyball, he thinks it affects the sport the most out of any sport. And this is a guy who, like, he's a professional working with an NHL team, and he even said that. And he always ripped on volleyball. So to hear him say it, I was like it's clearly like a it must be like something that people have done research into. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Oh, for sure. Like if you're watching a volleyball game and you just focus on, I'm going to look at momentum and stuff, like you can see it switch sides.
Yeah.
Just from body language alone, how teams carry themselves, mindset, even just like your posture.
Yeah.
Tyler's one
100%.
everybody. But like as soon as you make a mistake and you're closing up and you shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes. You should be learning from the mistakes and making aggressive errors and having your teammates not going, oh man, what are they doing? Why? Like you should. It's hard to build that support and that base, but as soon as you have that, then you can build, and that's I think where the trust is.
Yeah.
You don't have people like if a point gets scored against you, you're looking around like, what's this person doing? Why are they doing that? But momentum is something huge. I'm glad you told that story. I was going to bring it up, but I didn't know any of the facts behind it or who it was. But yeah, you can see momentum like change on sides of the net, and it's kind of like a seventh player on the court. You know what I mean?
100%.
It's the reason why bench sellies and in the game sellies are huge.
Oh,
If someone gets a kill, I want to see my bench go nuts.
100%.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is. Like as long as they're not going to get like.
Do you remember the Brooklyn
but all they
Nets
do is get
last
warned.
season? Their bench,
Yes.
the Brooklyn Nets, and they do that little dance every time, like where they move their foot in and out, like D'Angelo Russell, and they ended up finishing like sixth in the East.
Yeah.
They weren't sixth in the East, but they
No.
were just like they had Jared Dudley. They just had a group of guys that like Jared Dudley's out of shape. I think he's old as whatever.
Elmer Fudd from Space Jam.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying though? Like they had their culture was why they did so well, man. Like they were a dangerous team.
Why don't you think their culture is that great this year?
Yeah,
What's the difference? One player.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
If you
100%.
enjoy playing with your teammates, you're going to play better. So if you're doing stuff like Sully's, it gives you a reason to play even better.
And you don't even have to like them. That's the thing. You don't have to like your teammate. Do you know what I'm saying though? Like, you don't have to like them, but go out and play ball. Like,
100%.
You watch The Last Dance. Like, Dennis Rodman was a weirdo, but Michael Jordan's like, if you're gonna get rebounds for us, do whatever you want to do. Be weird, but they still balled out when it came time. You know what I mean?
And they knew. They knew, like, he was saying that Rodman went to his hotel room once, which he never does. But he knew Rodman would run through a wall for anybody in the same colored jersey.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's the mindset of
you got to put that stuff aside when it comes time.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's even touching on like people nowadays that, you know, you play club with this person, you play high school with this person, you're friends, and then you play against each other. Man, you should want to embarrass your friends. You should want to have bragging rights. Like we all play.
I remember having a war against Jordan.
This is a little service announcement.
We did.
You can play against your friends. This is us, and this is 15 years later, and we're still friends. You're still going to be friends with them, but you want to you want to beat them.
It feels that much better.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that like jerseys
100%.
over friendships kind of deal.
Yeah.
Why don't we each take a little bit of time to maybe talk about experiences we've had, whether as a coach or a player, where we had dealt with bad team culture and dealt with good team culture, kind of like just examples and just talking about that. You guys, what do you think about trying that?
Yeah, that works.
Like,
I like that idea.
I just like first thing that comes on the top of my head, and once again, you know, we keep our names to a minimum, but you know, I spent when I was playing volleyball on a specific team, there were years where we had such talented groups, so much talent, but the guys weren't getting along that well. And some of them may end up listening to this, and they're going to know who I'm talking about. And it wasn't really anyone's fault. It was all of our faults. Like, we weren't willing to put that stuff aside for the better of the team. And just like, you know what I mean? Like, we didn't get along that great. Some of us, there were groups, it was cliquey, but we let that translate onto the floor, and we had no team culture at all. And, you know, I think management, I'll call it, I think management didn't help the situation either, but it was such a shame to see. Like, I look back and on some of the teams that I'm talking about, and I'm like, man, like, we should have destroyed, and we wouldn't. And it was strictly culture. That was the only thing we had missing. We were physically there. We had the technical, we had the talent. Our roster was stacked, and we'd lose to teams because we just didn't have it here. And we were letting things that were happening off the court affect us in practice and in matches. And that was a real big wake-up call for me. And I think it's part of why, as a coach, what helped me learn how important that was my experience and knowing that I never wanted to be a part of that ever again.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's some teams that you can be a part of that start off good, called honeymoon phase, and then just kind of crashes and burns because of team culture. And then next, say the next 2 years, say it's 16U, 18U, the same group, or the following year, then they end up winning or being very successful because they realize we're all talented players, but if we're not on the same page and not pushing for the same goal, it's super important even to even mesh, even make sure everybody's included on a team. For university, if they're having a gathering or whatever, if everyone's not invited, as a coach, I'm pissed. They're getting punished because it doesn't matter if they don't show up, but the invitation has to be there so that 1 through 15, 16 is a unit.
They feel important.
Yeah.
Part of the team.
And do stuff together. You're only there.
You don't have to like
a little
them.
bit. No,
you don't have to like them, but do it with
them. Yeah. Deal with them and make it so that it doesn't affect the on-court stuff.
I played on a soccer team that I'll say half the players didn't like each other, but it was one of the best teams I've ever played with, because the thing that was good about that is we weren't afraid to tell each other when things were wrong because we weren't trying to hurt the other person's feelings. We were just there to work together
to win.
To win, right?
Mm-hmm.
We would go to parties and hang out, but we weren't best friends. I wasn't calling them and hey, how was your day today? It's just when we're on the field, we worked really well together. Then I played on teams with some of my best friends where it's you don't want to hurt their feelings. So you don't want to be oh, that was a bad set. That was a bad pass or something like that when I'm playing volleyball, because you didn't want to hurt their feelings because this is a friendship that you've had for a while that could lose over volleyball.
You need to just learn that you need to be okay with the fact that you're going to get called out, but it's only because of you just want to win. It's not. It shouldn't carry over into your friendship, but sometimes it does. That's the worst part.
Well, and that's when you're more friends than teammates.
Yeah.
Right? When it's friendship first, teammates second, and it's better like us where it's teammates first and then we became friends.
Yeah, we'll hold each other accountable for whatever.
Yeah,
you know what
exactly.
I mean? Which
100%.
is a good balance. But a lot of people don't have that balance.
Yeah.
If you get one of your friends who's a little more sensitive than the other people, and you're man, you were late on this, or it was too tight, then you see them all closed up, shoulders shrunk, silken.
Yeah.
And that's a hard balance to have.
Oh, and that is contagious. That negative body language, it spreads like the coronavirus. I'm telling you, it's contagious.
Yeah.
So.
Tyler has this saying he always says, "Is it blood and water?"
What is emotional bleeding? Is that
emotional bleeding, and it's like dropping blood and water, and it just you can see it spread.
Yeah.
Spreads,
and that goes positively and negatively. So when there's someone who's doing something positive, it spreads through the team. The whole team feels it. But in the moment one person hangs their head, it spreads through everyone, and it ruins all of the team chemistry and team culture.
Well, you know what? It's funny you say that. So I look at our high school season this past year, and we had a great team, but I think our I guess how good we were at holding things together. I think the success was probably part of why the girls did such a good job of not worrying that much. But I remember one time we were playing JL, and actually it was Jackie from our club team. She served to start the game, and they were up 9-0 on us, and then it turned into 13-2. And I remember calling a timeout, and the girls weren't worried. It was in our gym. JL was going wild, getting loud, and we were all just whatever. And we beat them 25-17. So, like, that, like, do you know what I mean? It was, like, the girls, I looked around that, because you know me, like, I'm not concerned. Like, I don't get worried about that stuff. And I remember, like, normally with kids and girls especially, like, that would just be confidence gone. We're losing this set. You know what I mean? They give up. And I remember I called the timeout, and I looked around the circle at the girls' faces. It was just me there because it was one of those league games. And I was like, man, these guys aren't phased. Like, they're a little frustrated, you know what I mean? But they still think they're going to win this set. Sure enough, we go on a huge run. They can't stop us. And then we beat them 3 straight. The next 2 sets are like 13 and 14. And I thought to myself, our mindset, because what happened was JL was getting all hyped up when they're up 9-0, 13-2. What happens once it's 15-15? Done. They're written off. They're like, oh, you know what I mean? And I was like, and I remember they called a timeout in that same set. And I said, girls, we finish this out. This game's over. They're not going to, like, they're done. And it was a prime example of good, and I'm not going to call out, their team culture or whatever, but just that mindset that we had, they didn't have it. And I think because we were that team that had been winning, it's a little easier when you're in that driver's seat. But at the same time, all JL had to do was still run with that momentum and keep that going, not lose that once it's 15-15. Still be like, okay, we just were up 9-0. We can do that again. But they didn't. They flipped it. And it was just, that was it, right? So I'll never forget that. And I was proud of the girls for that. I was like, holy, like I was like, I wouldn't say I was nervous. In my mind, I'm like, gee, like 9-0. This is a massacre. But at the same time, I felt good about us winning that match. I wasn't concerned. And I think volleyball, too, the biggest thing is that because it's in sets, you could lose 25-2. But as long as you go out there with a high head, you could just beat them at the same score. And then it's all you know is 1-1. You know what I mean? So
I saw a great example when I was coaching for the Mount last year in the finals against Holland College. I think we lost the first. I can't remember what the sets were at, but I remember we weren't doing too well. And next thing you know, they called a timeout, and then our girls started dancing in our timeout.
I watched that.
I'm like, this is the provincial final. We're dancing. In my head, I'm like, okay, this isn't good. But then you look at all of them; they all look confident. They're just dancing.
Comfy.
Well,
they were
comfortable dancing. Like this isn't like they're just playing it friendly, like an exhibition, not the final. And then we went out and won the rest of the game. Like,
which was how you carried yourselves all season.
Yeah.
Too. And that's the thing. You can't. Well, Justin actually told me at Nationals. He told me there was a time over. He said he's like, what happened to the team that dances around and stuff?
Yeah.
Now you're just standing here like that's why you guys that mentality was part of why you guys did so well. You're talented, but you had that confidence. Where's that now? And he told me, you probably remember the time I'm talking about.
Oh, I was frustrated.
Yeah. Because all of a sudden you go to a new setting and you're like, oh, throw that away.
We have to try to be what the other teams are. Your culture is your culture.
It's who you are. It doesn't matter what day, whether it's Tuesday morning or it's game day and it's Saturday.
It doesn't matter if we're going to play against Team Canada. We've played a certain way and done things a certain way all year. That's what we do, unless we're game planning a different way. Yeah. But that's not the culture. The culture shouldn't change because of who you play.
But sometimes the game plans can distract the culture.
Yeah.
We faced that sometimes this year. We were super planning out, when this rotation, we're doing this, and then it didn't work out well because we lost who we were as a team. Like, even on the dancing, we did this can dance every warm up, and it pissed people off. But we did it in tip off, and we did it all season. We did before the font. Like, it's who we were. It's kind of to get ourselves loose, and it's just to like remember that team culture is there. That's why you have success.
Yeah. Man, it's so big that like you like I look at us with Nationals when we took our club team. That we'll talk about it, but I'm talking about this stuff here.
Oh yeah.
And the everybody eats. Remember when we played the Dinos and before Emily hurt her wrist, because that kind of was like that was really where things fell off. But Donos came third or fourth. Actually, the girl from your team, I think, probably played for them.
Yeah.
But we were, and that team, Alberta, like, that was pretty much Alberta's best players. They're looking through the net like, what are these girls doing? Like,
and there were 7. Like, we didn't have a full big team, but everybody bought in.
But it was like 15, 17, 17, because we didn't throw that away. We didn't care that they were.
We had no reason to throw it away.
Exactly.
And that was a prime example of, if you use that mentality when you get to that next step, it throws the other team off. They're like, man, these guys are way worse than us, but they don't think they are. And then they play that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, we had no business playing with them.
Team? Remember that other team that their coach hated us?
Oh, yeah.
You should have got the yellow.
Oh!
That was day 2. That was the second day.
Yeah.
Oh, that was when we started doing the Martin Luther King.
Yeah. Just being the shitheads we were.
Saying they were discriminating against us.
Yeah.
That was funny.
He hated us.
Didn't he throw a skateboard too?
Oh, yeah.
He was nuts.
And all that was our girls and us just getting fired up every point.
Yeah.
And honestly, it changed.
One thing about bench celebrations that Tyler talks about, I talk about. Down refs, up refs, if you guys are listening. Like, all they're going to do is tell you to move back, blow their whistle,
give you a
maybe give you a warning. That's it. I'll take warnings all day. Like,
yeah, they'll appreciate it.
It just means you're making it an event. It's a show, everything.
Yeah. They're never going to penalize you for it. It's just,
unless it gets too out of hand, but
yeah.
But still,
you gotta be respectful. You can't, you don't want to disrespect anybody. But if you're out there having a good time, they're just gonna make sure you're standing behind the line once the play gets back going again.
Yeah,
that's the only thing. And
refs are like us. They'll enjoy. They'll like chuckle to themselves, being like, "This is a fun environment. This is why." Yeah, that's why refs ref, because they love volleyball. They
hanging out.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Like those guys love hanging out in the gym.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But one thing, I think that's one thing volleyball needs to take away from basketball is that basketball benches, man, basketball benches get the job done. Like,
oh yeah.
Those guys, like, they're supporting their teammates. Even the ones that are never getting in there, they got their towel, shaking their towel. Do you know what I mean? Like, I give kudos to basketball as a big sport for bench just energy. Football too, actually. Because the thing with football is you're watching the other half. You're watching the offense play, so you're gonna get amped up. You know what I mean? So now it's my turn to go out there. So, like, why not do that in volleyball? You need to be ready. You need to be into the game.
In NCAA, their bench celebrations are wild because
they're hilarious.
They have bench practice their celebrations, like before their actual
working on
practice. They show up to practice their bench celebrations.
Yeah. Exactly, and it's huge.
And the one thing that kills me about bench celebrations, if you have a player who's on the bench and they're celebrating as hard as they can every second, and then they get subbed on, and the player who subbed them off sits back there and not even claps, not even puts a smile. That kills the culture automatically.
It does.
Because if you're going to be out there playing and you get subbed off, you have to be doing the same thing that the players are doing on the bench, because you do not want to kill the chemistry. And that's one thing that I know as a coach. If I look down and I see a player sulking at the end of the bench after we sub them off, I'm like, why am I going to sub you back on?
No.
Even if you are my best player, you're not going to enhance what's going on.
No.
Right? If anything,
exactly. You're too worried about your own performance.
And that's going to touch base.
For the team.
Yeah, and that's going to touch base on the next thing we'll talk about is everybody eats.
Yeah. Just getting back to that everybody eats thing. That probably some people are probably going to know exactly what we're talking about when we say that. Some won't. When we coached together, the three of us, we had. I guess it kind of started with that group we had the year before that. That's not really where the group we had, there was a lot of kids on that team that had played for other teams that we were competing against that didn't make it or that they didn't want. And that year, that was a prime example of our mentality and our culture that we had with that group was like, those girls are pretty upset about, a lot of their friends are on this other team and they played with this group for so long. and then 18U comes along, and then now they don't want them. And so we pretty much had a bunch of girls sort of in that situation. Like one club team didn't have enough girls, so we got a few of them. A couple got cut from this team, so we had a few of them. And then there was a few that we kind of had from CPA or whatever. But that group, that Tigers group, that 18U year was more or less the Canada Games team. And we were the team.
Oh.
They were incredible. They got bronze at Nationals. You've got Julie, Catherine, Katie Wagger, Libby, Victoria Turco, Vienna, Megan played, Hannah Wilkie from Tigers. It just unlimited amount of players. And the thing was, we were giving them the biggest challenge every time. Every time we played them. Even Rick Scott said in an interview, do you remember seeing that? Julie's, that we were he said, because they dominated all year. So the guy's kind of like, hey, like, did you have any challenges or whatever? And he's like, actually, just that semifinal against Sonics. And that was because we just had that mentality, that whatever kind of attitude. And, that team was sort of a pretty even team. Like, you could sub anyone in and out at any time on our team. So that everybody eats thing, it was easier to even kind of stress that stuff. And because they all were getting equal chances and sometimes it's hard it's hard to get a player into that culture and feeling that way when they're not out there on the court. But so everybody eats is kind of what we live by, and I'll get, I guess, one of you two to kind of elaborate on it. But it's just something where we're all in it together. We win that banner.
I can talk about it.
Yeah.
Everything eats. It's like you're going to a picnic. Everyone has to bring something to the picnic. When you go to the picnic, you don't want to be bringing the same thing as someone else. So, like, if Jordan's going to bring a salad, Robbie brings a salad, and I bring a salad, we're all
That's a boring picnic.
Yeah, it's bad. So you want to make sure that you're bringing something different to the picnic, right? So Jordan might bring some chicken, Robbie might bring the salad, I might bring some fries.
Damn right.
But but because we're all bringing something different to the picnic, we all get to eat together. So it's like on a volleyball team, you don't want to be bringing the same thing that your teammate brings. You want to be bringing something different so that you are all important to the team. It's not just like saying
what can you do to help the team?
Yeah. It's really having that mindset of everybody has certain roles and every day is a different day. Yeah. I'm not going to bring cheesecake 5 days to 5 different potlucks, but I'll bring a bunch of different stuff so that it's an even keel, even spread so that everybody eats. It originated from like Cold Game Kelv back in the day with the Deer Squad, with Kella going, everybody eats, he feeds. So if one person's there and they bring more than the others, it doesn't matter. Everybody's eating. Everybody's contributing.
Yeah, and every time someone scores a point, it's not just you that scored a point, it's the team. Everyone is celebrating. Everyone gets your goal or whatever you've done, it goes to the team, right? Another good way to think about it is if you have two setters. One setter is like 6'2", can block, huge, great setter. Then you have another setter that's 5'4", very fast, can play good defense. There's two different types of setters. For one game, you might need a setter that's going to play defense. For the other game, you might need a setter that's going to block, right? You have something different to offer to the team, so that way coaches get to use you differently.
And accepting that is the big thing. Accepting that this is what your role is with the group.
Yeah, how many years ago did we use like this? This was probably 3 years ago at least.
Yeah.
I still use the potluck mentality today. Coaching about everybody eats.
That's how we do things.
Yeah, and like knowing to be interchangeable, like depending on the other team, what's best for that game, and supportive.
Because it's bad being on the bench and not knowing that if you're important to this team or not. So the whole idea is like you're sitting back there and you know that you brought something to the potluck. It could be your serve, it could be defense, it could be you hitting the ball down the line. Like you have something that the team needs to be complete.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, and every player will have that one thing that they're bringing to the potluck. And it's on us coaches to make sure that everyone feels like they're bringing something to the potluck.
That was what I wanted to say. Like, the thing about team culture, like you can go on about it all you want. The players are important, but if the coach isn't bought in or the coach is the one who's regulating it. It's
a trickle-down effect, right?
It starts from the top and it trickles all the way down to the bottom.
And you, as a coach, you may be great at trying to instill it. Like, you might do a good job, and it still may not work. You just don't have the group for it. But you are the most important piece to that puzzle. And if you're not bought in and you're not like supporting that, then it just won't work. And I think, like, just going off that, like, when I was in high school, my high school coach, like, the thing about team culture is you can still win and you don't have to be the best team out there. Like, Sackville High, we won 5 banners.
Let's not talk about it.
She said this.
5 banners in a row. And I can honestly say I think we were the best team in the province. 2 of them. You could argue 3. And I mean, I'm not trying to offend my boys, but we weren't the best every year. Grade 10, we were far from the best. And
we hated you guys because you were cheerleaders. That's what we used to say. You guys used to cheerlead all the time.
But you know what? That's where I give props to Pete, my high school coach, and I hope he's going to listen to this, is that he managed our team so well and allowed us to be wild. He was the one who encouraged that. Remember, who, before games, we do that little thing, and we cheer, what time is it, game time. He let us say some stuff. He let us talk a little bit through the net. You know what I mean? Like, he was all for that. And in practices, he'd suit up. He'd be the setter like, we do starters versus bench. And he'd suit up with the setters or with the bench setting, because Justin and I were do a 6-2. And, man, he was letting us have it. And it was competitive. Like, we should have been spanking those guys. But they were like, they get a kill. Say one of them blocks me or something, right? Some random grade 10 who means nothing to the team. He'd be like, get out, Brooks. And you know what I mean? And I'd be like, man, who are you? But that was a part of why we had so much success, because we were doing that in practice. We were competing. In the Last Dance there, the other episode, their coach would put Michael with the bench. Did you see that part?
Yeah.
He would start off with the starters. Once they get a lead, he'd switch it. And then make practice competitive against them, which is awesome. The practices should be your most competitive. Yeah. Your most competitive if you're a well-structured team.
It's where you set the culture, right? Yeah. Practice is the most important thing. The game is just the result of the practice. Like, you have to go into practice every single day trying to implement anything that you want to do in a game. So if it's good posture and body language, you got to be doing that in practice. If it's celebrations, you better celebrate in practice as you would in the game. Don't wait.
Sometimes you have to force that too. Like, remember Tyler with CPA this year? Things are getting a little dull because we're just winning game.
Yeah.
And we had to start making it more. And as a coach, we started to make everything was a competition.
Yeah.
If you're doing serve receive, it's a competition.
Yeah.
Because and I think we can all agree, girls, the everybody eats and the accepting your role and being happy if the team scores a point but you didn't score it. It's harder to get the girls on board. And this is my personal opinion. I think you guys can agree. I find guys are more likely to buy in. Guys are more okay with accepting their role, whether it's being on the bench or subbing in to do this. Girls, sometimes it's hard to convince them that they're still contributing, no matter what it is.
We had a good example of that happen at provincials with their CPA team. We had a starting middle who started for us all year, good player, like love her and all. And then we decided to go with another player for, I think it was the quarterfinals, just to give them
a chance to play.
Yeah, it was our third last game.
And they did well. And we decided to go with them in the semis. And then right before the finals, the other middle came up and talked to us and like, I want to know what I did wrong, why I'm not playing. Not in a negative way. And we just told her pretty much everyone eats, and that in this situation, we need something that she's offering to the team that you might not have been offering us at the time. And it wasn't until
nothing she did either.
Yeah, it was it was not her fault, and it wasn't like the player was playing so much better. It was just there's something there different that she was offering us that we thought we needed in the final. And then it wasn't until the finals, I think in the third set, where this girl went back to serve, went on a little bit of run, and I looked at the bench, and that
middle looked at me and was like, I get it, Tyler.
Yeah, I understand. She gave me the nod. She's like, I get it. I understand.
That was one of the most like mature and like proudest moments I had as a coach was when you rewatch that match, it's that player running out to the court to celebrate extra hard, and it's like to see
made
that
a sacrifice. She made a sacrifice for the team. She wanted to play because there's no volleyball player that doesn't want to be on the court. But she's just like, hey, I trust my coaches. They think that this lady needs to play over me. Okay, I'm going to trust their opinion.
That takes someone who's very mature and sees the big picture of a championship, of doing better than, oh, you know what, I had a good game, but other people around me didn't, and buying in. That's very important.
I've seen teams where you lose a game, and the first thing a player does is run up to the stat sheet to see how many kills do I have.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We lost.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
That's the worst. And you know what? I can say one thing. When I was at UMB and I was a backup setter and going in who knows when, cold all the time, getting that support also from the starting player, like if you're that person that's coming off the bench, it feels so much better when you're supported by the person you're going in there for, and they're not out there scowling and being all upset. And that's one thing I'll say about Marty. I don't mind saying his name on here. You know, he'll probably never watch this. But I remember he was hurt, and I played against Laval. And rather than like hoping for us to not do good so it would make him look better, and we hadn't beaten Laval in like, that was the first time in a long time since that we beat them. And every time out, he'd pull me aside and he was like, man, he was looking at what the other team was doing for me. Like, he's like, man, if you dump, that's that phantom dump story. I think I've told you guys about it. Marty says, if you dump Brooks, it'll score. Like, he's trying to help me win this game. He never beat Laval up to that point. He had never beaten Laval. Neither had the setters before him. But he was fine with me being that first setter to start and beat them. He didn't care about that. He wanted us to get that win. And one thing I can say about him was, when you're the person in the driver's seat and you're that starter, you have to accept it when the tides change. And I mean, he was hurt, so he wasn't able to play. But the thing was about him was, even if I got subbed in for him because he was struggling, he still supported me the same way. Yeah. And I know
that's a good teammate.
And that all starts with this up here, right? Marty,
he wasn't happy about it.
Yeah, Marty's a gamer. He hates to lose, whether it's lost or tough. Like, he just hates to lose.
The only question he's gonna get asked is, how many AUS championships did you win? They're not gonna say, how many of those games did you start in? Like, when kids ask, you know what I mean? No one cares about that. Like,
that's that famous Brian Scalabrine quote,
where it's just like, the reporter asked him. He asked him in the report, like, how does it feel to not play 1 minute in the NBA Finals? He's like, that's not funny. He's like, in 5 years, I'm going to tell my kids I started. In 10 years, I'm going to tell them I was the most important player. And then in 20 years, I was the MVP. Because at the end of the day, the only thing
no one's going to ask. No one cares.
Winning the title.
And that's all about a bigger goal rather than a personal goal.
And that's what
100%.
That's what team culture is. Making sacrifices for the better goal.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I find our high school season this past year was such a good example of how big that stuff affects it, because it was the same team the year before with one of the best players. Was like, we lost a super talented player, but if not everyone's on the same page and not bought into a specific thing, if we're thinking about ourselves and being selfish, we are not going to have the success. And like, I look at someone like, and I'm going to say this person's name, Kenzie from CPA. Like, that is
the glue girl.
Glue, yeah.
Man, there were parents from Truro cursing her out because of how loud she was being, and she doesn't. And I honestly, as her coaches, I don't even know if we gave her enough recognition. I think we probably should have shouted her out more often. Yeah, well, I should have said more, and I always would tell her that, but I feel like I should have said it more to the team. Like, that because her doing that, it would cause, that's the thing, it takes one person. You talk about blood, positive or negative, one drop of blood, if it's a positive, you get a Kenzie being all loud and annoying, the others are like, first they may look at her like, geez, like, look at this kid screaming and yelling. But after a while, you look down that bench, they're all doing it because they look weird if they don't, right? So,
and it's funny. It's funny you say that because I remember at provincials we subbed her in to serve,
and everyone was like cheering for her. She goes back, serves the ball to the back wall. And
yes,
and everyone was cheering for her.
Mr. Serve, yeah.
But like,
and she was the glue person though. Like she was so important to the team.
That player there, like, to have someone like that on your team, it's not often you get it, but when you do, man,
you appreciate it. Oh,
it's
for
like
sure.
Tess McIsaac on our Sonic scene, another one.
We'll probably have to have a full hour segment on just the glue person. And like they hold everybody together. They're the one to make jokes when stuff's not going well to kind of lighten the mood. And when you don't have it, and then when you have it, you appreciate it as a coach. And you're like, this person's very valuable to everybody, or it's everybody around us. Yeah. It helps the wheel go round.
Don't you find?
The star,
oh, right? Sorry. Go ahead, Ty.
Not every player can be the star of the team. No. You can't have.
It's never gonna happen. I read a quote. I said this to our Sonics team this year. Jordan Farmer, remember him from the Lakers? Light skinned guy. He said the hardest part about being in the NBA is we were all the best player in like our state in high school. Then we go to college, we're the best at our college. Then you join the NBA. We can't all be that person. And the hardest part about being an NBA athlete is the fact that you were the stud your whole life. Towns probably those guys are probably eating for free at their restaurants in their hometowns their whole life. Do you know what I mean? Like they were local celebrities. To go from that to maybe never doing any on-court stuff, it'd be tough. But he said when you learn to put that aside and then you win and you see that finished product, it's all worth it. And that quote was it was the perfect quote for me.
We kind of experienced, well, not the same thing because it's not the NBA, but this year, we're kind of in a funk at Mount A. I hate airing dirty laundry out, but I'll keep it.
Yeah.
And I called ourselves, it was a practice, we just weren't ourselves. So I asked everybody to raise their hand if you were one of the best two players on your high school team. Every person raised their hand up. I was like, well, this is the next level. I also said, how many people did I recruit here? It being my first year, so I didn't recruit a single soul. I was like, if you aren't a good teammate, I won't bring you back. I'd much rather everybody buy in and everybody realize we were all the best players on our teams, but we're here now, and we have to figure out what's best for the brand, the goal, and buying in to the potluck where, I might have been the best player on this team, but if I get a double sub or I go in to pass, it's not gonna miss a beat for anything on the court. Yeah. You're gonna have the confidence and like betting on yourself that you'll go in and believing in the coaches too. So if you don't believe in the coaches and you get subbed in, then you're not gonna have the confidence that the coaches have in you or know that if I make this sub, I trust you enough to do this.
And it's a two-way street.
Oh, for sure.
From the coach's perspective, like we have to put the trust in the players so they can trust us back. There's a lot of times where a coach doesn't really trust a player, but will sub them in, and they're waiting for the player to make a mistake to sub them back.
Yeah.
You have to trust every player on your team. If they're on your team, there's a reason why you picked them to be on your team.
Oh, 100%.
100%. I can actually even going on that. And I promised I'd give this person a shout out, so I'm going to do it. And I knew I'd have to talk about them anyway. I'm going to talk about with Alessandra. And she said that she's fine with the name drop because she watches these. Her snapping her leg like she did. You know what I mean? Like that girl she had a Paul George injury. Like that was serious. So for those who wouldn't even know, we coached a kid who incredibly talented, ceiling through the roof, strong as an ox, but confidence and anxiety is a thing that that's pretty much what she has to overcome. She's a top player in the province. That's no question to anybody. It's can she overcome this? And I remember when we started the season, and she was already, even before the injury, she was top player for her age, easy. But she still, like, sometimes that anxiety and that confidence would just you wouldn't see it. You're like, why is she like this? And I remember after the injury, of course, if something like that happens to someone who already kind of lacks that, it's going to be even worse. And we talk about our coach having faith in us and trusting us going in there. I remember talking to her at the beginning of the year and saying, like, for one, I was shocked at how quickly she came back.
Yeah, I didn't think she was going to be able to play.
No.
Saying to her, I'm like, Alessandra, like, you are one of, if not the best player in this province, even after you snapped your leg. So, like, just and that was a big. I personally, and her and I have talked about this, like, us having that faith in her. I think that completely changed. Like, she felt that way. I remember when she was in grade 9 and we watched her play club.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because she was so upset that she didn't play good. And it's like, girl, you're the top grade 9 in the province. Ease up. But she was like when we had her in the school season, our faith in her allowed her to that's why we say the trickle down effect, how important that coach is. Because we said you're this good, they believe it.
Yeah.
And if your coach doesn't have that faith in you, and it's not to say the coach needs to just pump your tires all the time, whatever, but that's a part of the culture. Even if you don't believe, you have to pretend like you believe.
And
CPA,
coaches surrounding them. Yeah, and coaches surrounding themselves with coaches who they trust and believe in the same goal is super important too.
Yeah. Like I'll say it. 23-17 in the second set. We're up in the first set in the provincial finals against CEC. We're down 23-17. I still wanted to stay positive. I wanted to be like, no, we're going to come back. But that was the first time all year I was like, oh my God. I was starting to picture the speech you and I were going to have to give to them. We hadn't lost barely a match all year. I was like, oh, what are we going to say to these? How am I going to be able to talk? Tyler, you would have had to have done the whole speech because I wouldn't have been able to do it.
The boys aren't good at losing.
So no, just going off, like, that was the only time, like, in my head, I'm like, man, like, geez, we might lose. And when I rewatched the game, they're like, look at the CPA coaches, like, they still don't look one bit phased. And and because of our calmness, that trickled down to the girls. Those girls were terrified. They were about to blow the biggest season ever, but they saw us being calm, which, Tyler, you are calm, cool, and collected. Me,
I'm not.
I was like, oh my God, what are we doing? Tyler, and that's the thing I respect about you, Tyler.
Yeah.
I'm a good pretender. I can pretend. Tyler, that's how he is. Tyler was keeping it cool the whole time, and I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna lose. But I couldn't let the girls see it. So I remember calling that time out and being like, come on, we got this. We've been killing it all year. And in my head, I'm like, we just ruined this. It's over. But you know what I mean? Like,
but it's and that's having a good balance from the head coach, assistant coach, and surrounding yourself with people who, you know what, aren't the same as you, but like are nice like person to ask.
It's funny because after we won, Jordan jumps up, celebrating, and I'm sitting there still doing stats, like still finishing my stats.
Yeah.
Tyler, still, I gotta finish these stats up. We just got an ace. Yeah.
And that's surrounding yourself with your weaknesses. Yeah. And that's surrounding yourself with your weaknesses, right? 100%. If you have 3 people that are shitting bricks, pardon my French, but then you're that kind of goes down. But if one person's cool, calm, collected, then that kind of equals itself out. 100%. That's one big thing I'll show to Andrew out, one of my assistant coaches, and John Kelsey. They're all great people to have, but Andrew is nothing phases him, and I'm like, yeah, let's get 3. And then he's like, all right, well, let's do this, and just counteracts.
You need both. You need
both.
For
sure.
Yeah, and it's
in practice.
It's important.
Oh yeah.
You get your job done there.
And then in games, like, hey, I already did all the work. Chill out, relax.
Yeah.
You guys know the adjustment. You knows what needs to be done.
I try my best to. I think I show that. That's just not what's going on here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm good at pretending like, oh, like, geez, she doesn't look like he even cares what happens here. Like, trying to just stay calm, But in my head, I'm like, ugh. And the sweat stains are building up. But you just got to do your best, because the moment they see you lose faith, and like that's where we talk about the coach. The moment your team sees you lose faith in them, they're never gonna have faith in themselves.
Yeah.
So
And like
Over coaching is worse than under coaching, right? So if you're
100%.
doing too much and you're getting too worked up, you're making too many points in coaching, that's just as bad as not saying anything.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
Getting your team worked up for no reason.
Yeah, and it's I like the one message I'd send like just to coaches and to players, to anyone who listens, is that like we are by no means perfect coaches, furthest thing from it, tons to learn. But one thing that I did learn, and I think we all learn through experience, that's the worst part. Sometimes you have to have that crappy culture season to have a good culture season. And I think we all had them as athletes. We all had them as coaches. So the three of us, when we started working together, it was like, okay, I already have my bad experiences. I'm done with that. Like, I don't care if we come first or 13th. This team is going to have good culture. We're going to have fun. We're going to stay positive.
Yeah.
And not to throw anyone under the bus or anything, but have you guys ever coached with someone who wasn't on the same page?
Yeah.
No.
I have.
Actually, no, that's a lie. I do.
Yeah.
I do,
it sucks, and it's not all it's cracked up to be. So it's good to have a great supporting staff that all believes and is your weakness.
Yeah.
They're there because that's not where you're the best at, but you can realize that, and then it helps grow the culture and grow the team.
Yep. Being willing to accept that, like for me, I could be a little too easygoing, right? And I know that's a big weakness of mine. Like, I just want everyone to like me, right? So with you two are the ones that are gonna, like, you'll both boom, you know what I mean? Where the things I want to say, but I'm just like, she's so cute, I can't say that to her. Look at her smiling. You guys are like, hey, get it together. And that's I think that's part of what, with us, it's every one of our weaknesses is another one of our strengths. You know what I mean? And that makes it that's a coaching staff. You know what I mean? That's what you need in a coach. And also trust, man. You gotta trust. You don't trust your players. You don't trust your other coaches. If you assume that, you know what I mean? Like, we go on these trips and we just, like, we tell the girls this is the bedtime, whatever. Like, we trust them. We trust that they're gonna go to bed at that time. We're not gonna, like, and the thing is, if maybe they're breaking that rule or whatever, but if they aren't and they see that we don't trust them and they see we're checking in and wondering all the time, how does that make them feel?
Oh, exactly.
Whereas if they notice, hey, these guys aren't even checking in on us, like, they really must trust us. Let's not betray that trust. Let's not ruin this. Let's do what they asked.
And like, that's from us. Like, we were the people, like, Jordan's basketball team. He was in Truro. I drove up, picked him up at his hotel. We went to a party.
My coach won't listen to this, so we can talk about that, because he won't be tuning in. So I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable discussing that.
Yeah, broke him and a couple of his friends out, took him to a party in a different town because they were at a hotel. But us knowing that this is what people could be doing, it makes everything easier, because we were those folks.
Yeah, and you know what too, like, the big thing with it is that, like, Warren, my coach, he did trust us. Like, I mean, we went to that party with you, but we just popped in, stayed for 15 minutes, and then went back to our hotel. You know what I mean? We didn't do anything. We didn't do anything bad. We were breaking the rules leaving the hotel, but he trusted that we might. He knew we might do a little something, but he knew we weren't gonna, like, we weren't gonna hurt his reputation.
Yeah.
And I've played for coaches where it's just, there's no trust, and they don't have faith. And another thing, when you're coaching adults, it's even more important, because at that point you're talking to someone who is your peer.
Yeah.
Technically, right? So, and I think you guys probably learn that more and that's probably another topic we can get into is, you know, what happens when you're coaching adults versus coaching kids. You know what I mean? The difference between the two, and sort of the respect level. Like, the respect level should never change. Why not respect these kids like you would if you have to obviously go about it differently, and be, more of that parent role for them. But that doesn't mean you disrespect them anymore because they're not an adult, right? So
And that's all building trust.
yeah.
Anyway, that was episode 3, Culture Everybody Eats, the Deer Squad.
There's our alarm to cut it off.
There's our alarm to cut it off. Tyler's got to go to his other job. But yeah, tune in, watch the other episodes. Shoot us a topic, message us. Anything you want to talk on. We're
in the comments.
We're gonna have some guests too. There's already some people lined up to come on, talk about their experiences, whether it was university playing or stories they had. Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
All right, God bless.
As you can see, culture is a huge part of volleyball. I'd like to thank our fans and our faculty for help making our gym such an electric place to play. Our girls bought into a bigger goal, and we made great strides in just 1 year. Hopefully, we can still make huge strides next season.